Thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar, The Art of Perfect Playback and Lighting Design, presented by Michael Keller. My name is Laura Lawrence and I'm the Global Marketing Director at Harman. Just a few things before we get started. Everyone on the call is muted to keep down noise levels during the webinar. However, there is a Q&A function where you can submit your questions to the presenter and he'll try to answer as many questions as possible at the end. This webinar is being recorded and the link will be made available a few days after this presentation. We do have a number of other webinars taking place over the next few months for audio, lighting, video, and control. And we'd like to encourage you to take a look at the different webinars in our Learning Sessions Workshop series that can be found on pro.harman.com. We are adding new sessions weekly, so watch for those on the calendar. And now I'd like to introduce you to Michael Keller, the presenter for today's webinar. Michael is a touring lighting director, designer, programmer, and technician. Throughout his career, he has worked with a variety of touring acts, including Tina Turner, Lionel Richie, Paul McCartney, Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson, Black Sabbath, Ozzy Osbourne, and more. I would also like to introduce you to my colleague, Brad Schiller, the co-presenter for today's webinar. Brad has been involved in automated lighting for over 30 years and is currently a business development manager at Martin Professional. He is the author of the newly released Living the Lighting Life and the Automated Lighting Programmer's Handbook, as well as a regular columnist for PLSN. A self-described lighting geek, Brad enjoys sharing knowledge with others. And now I'm going to pass it over to you, Michael.
Hello there. I'm very honored to be here with you. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's head into it and let's talk with Brad then also. Bradley. Good morning.
Hi, Michael. And hello, everyone. Welcome. This is going to be a great presentation. Today, I'm going to be interviewing Michael along the way, and we're going to be talking with him about his wonderful career and specifically about how he plays back lighting for various concerts and how that influences the design and the technology that goes into it. Because the playback of a concert is really important, and getting good timing and hitting the buttons at the same time of the music and making it all look good is a skill that is very much acquired that Michael has mastered over the years. He in fact won the Parnelli Award being a lighting director back in 2016 because he's amazing. And I've had the pleasure of seeing him work many different types of shows, and his timing is extraordinary. So hopefully throughout this session, you're going to be able to learn a little bit of what makes him so awesome, and hear some funny stories and learn all about Michael and how he uses timing to enhance the various shows. So, Michael, how did you get started in lighting? Where did you begin?
Well, lighting's and color has always been part of my history. When I was a small child, I had colored lighting in my bedroom, and I was made aware how it changes your mood and atmosphere. And throughout the high school and I had lighting. We had a liquid light show, and I made par cans out of coffee cans and just had a little lighting company. And it's always been part of my life.
Very cool. And early on, didn't you work with Bill Graham, and how did that tie into?
Well, that's my first professional part of my career. I worked with FM Productions, which was Bill's production company. I started there basically just doing labor work, and it evolved into lighting. I started working at Winterland and became the house LD there.
Cool. And what acts did you work with there, and how did you kind of?
Well, with Winterland, it was Bill's premier venue in the Bay Area, so we went through every type of band possible. The Last Waltz was shot there, the Martin, and every week we'd have so many different types of acts coming through, and a lot of the Bay Area bands, that was basically their home venue also. So it was quite interesting. I saw the Sex Pistols there, Peter Frampton, The Who. I mean, it's just after a while, it was a pretty amazing experience. It was a great time to grow up in the industry.
It seems like it exposed you to a lot of different bands, which is really great. Do you play any musical instruments? Does that influence you? Have you done anything in that sense?
I do not. When I was a youngster in elementary school. I did try to take up guitar, and that didn't really act out very well. I went into the music store and they asked me which one I wanted. And I said, hey, the one with the most pickups, you know? And then that didn't pan out very well. And then I tried my luck at singing, and that definitely did not pan out well. So I stuck with my passion of lighting.
That's probably a good thing. I can't imagine you singing. No offense, but can't imagine that. Who are some people who have been influential in your career, and why have they been so influential along the way?
Well, I've been very lucky and blessed to work with some of the industry's greats. Peter Morris, Patrick Woodruff, Terry Cook, who works with Patrick, Baz, Mark Brickman. And each of these designers have unique styles, and you learn basically different things. They all have their great eye, and they're able to achieve their looks. And it's interesting to see and feel how each the designers achieve their end goal of what they want to present to the audience.
Okay. And you've been involved in concert lighting for a long time. How have you seen it, other than the technology, which obviously has changed? How have you seen concert lighting change over the years? And how have the designs and cueing in particular changed? Has it gotten easier or harder, the cueing and the playback? How has that changed?
Well, in the beginning, it was more just about illumination. But when I started at Winterland, we had the old Luxtral dimmers where you took a 2x4 and ran 4 or 6 dimmers at a time to do, and a blackout took 5 seconds. So yeah, it's changed quite a bit. Now it's become part of the production, more of an art form, where it is part, it's become the show or enhancing the show. And it's made it much more exciting over the years, and to be able to be part of that is exciting. The technology, of course, makes it you're able to achieve so much more than what we could do in the past. So I do enjoy it.
Very good. So let's move into a little bit more into actually how you prepare for a playback of a concert or a show of some type. Let's talk about the importance of timing. Why is perfect playback and great timing so vital to lighting design? How does it really help?
Well, I mean, during the show, the execution of a cue can either enhance or distract from the performance. If you're off time, and it's just it's distracting to the audience. You want to be there. You want to be part of the enhancement of the show, and not the show and take away from the show. We definitely don't want to have people going like, what was that all about? Because it's, it can be done. I've seen it happen at times where you're like, what are they trying to do there? And you're there to enhance, basically.
Right. And I know you like to say that you either have it or you don't, as far as timing and having good timing in your blood, if you will. But how do you yourself go through and learn a new song and pick up on the major musical changes, either something you've heard previously or something you're hearing for the first time? How do you learn?
For me, repetition of listening to the song over and over again, writing down, basically breaking it down, writing down the parts of the song, doing it 2 or 3 times with a blank sheet of paper, and then comparing what I've heard in all 3 passes, and then working, trying to hear exactly what I think should be accentuated in the show. That will help, the flow of it. A lot of times I've worked with people where you don't hear exactly what they're hearing. So you have to, again, go through repetition so you can understand exactly what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, that can be tough when the LD says, hey, I hear this little ching right there, and you don't hear it, and you're trying to figure out how to hit that cue.
It does happen quite often.
Yeah. Could you tell me that story about with Benny and the Barrelite and that cue you couldn't hear?
Yeah, well, Mr. Kirkham, brilliant operator, brilliant man, brilliant programmer. We were doing Michael Jackson, and there was a backbeat in. I was supposed to. There's some moles on stage. It was supposed to be a big hit, but I could never hear it exactly. So Benny, I just said, Benny would always reach over, and so we ended up moving the button next to Benny so he could hit that one backbeat every night, and look perfect that way. You got to work with what you have, and you have a great team. You utilize the great team.
Right.
Definitely.
And I like what you said also when you listen to a song that you go give it 3 passes before you call it done, and you see what you're hearing and you make note of that. That's really a smart approach.
Well, I mean, it helps if you're a musician, which I am not, but if you have a musical background, it's much easier to go with the flow of the music and and hear certain things that I don't always hear, So.
And when you're breaking down a song into the elements, obviously there's the obvious things, the verse and the chorus, and maybe a breakdown in the middle or whatever, or solo. But how do you yourself listen to a song, and what key things are you listening for?
Well, besides those, there's some key accents, and also you have to also watch the stage, where you'll see accents that aren't always musically there. That it's a dramatic effect or a look that the artist is doing and wants it to be enhanced, and so it takes all that into you take that all in and try to piece it together, and doesn't always happen instantaneously. It takes a few passes. For me, I like if I'm doing a major tour, I like basically about a week of prep time to get it into my head, get it into my blood. When I'm doing a show like that, I only listen to that music over and over. I don't listen to anything else. So it becomes part of you. So it becomes almost second nature. You're not reaching to listen to something for something. It's there, and you have to be on top of that to achieve the look.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. So I know when I was working with John Broderick, he was very precise about how I had to set up the front of house and the angle of my hands compared to the console, so I wouldn't get exhausted playing the cues and being worried about the ergonomics, so that the timing would be better physically. Do you do anything special for setting up your front of house area to ensure a good performance?
I do prefer having it the same every day. That's it's a luxury. If you're doing the festival circuit, that you don't always get that. So sometimes you have to adapt. But when you're dealing with major vendors, they usually provide for you to have exactly what you need to be comfortable. I myself, I'm using the mouse, a wireless mouse, quite often, because I'm not reaching for everything on the console. I prefer just having it everything there right in front of me within like a 1 foot area. So everything I'm not reaching to and taking up more time and looking for things. I know where everything is. It does help to have the same setup where the fact that you are aware of exactly what you're looking for and not having to think twice about it.
And do you stand or sit?
I sit quite often, but there are times that I do enjoy standing up and getting into it a little bit more. I had the unfortunate experience. We were doing this promotional tour, and where we were doing 3 shows of promotion a day, and it started out like the first one was at 8 o'clock in the morning in Toronto, and the sound man turns around and looks at me. He goes, "I think you were asleep, but you were standing up." I went, but I was still hitting buttons, wasn't I? He goes, yeah. He goes, okay.
That's cool. So you touched on a little earlier how you listen to the songs over and over and over, which is a great practice before you're going out on tour. But do you actually rehearse your playback skills before a show? Do you, sit on the
Yeah,
listen?
yes, I do. And with technology, it makes it so much easier that you don't actually have to have the rig. You can have visualizers, and there's so many out there that make it so much easier to deal with. And the way the technology has become, it's very accurate also. I mean, it's always better to have the real rig in front of you, but that's also becoming more of a luxury than it has been in the past due to the costs and just basically production costs. And the visualizers are so amazing nowadays. I do. I mean, yeah, I'll probably run songs probably 5 or 10 times over and over and trying to get it, tweaking it out better, trying to make it exactly how you think it should look. So yeah, we're very lucky now in this time period that we have those tools to work with.
Totally. I know some songs can be very difficult. I've had some that were really hard to learn. Can you share a story about a song that was really hard for you to grasp, but eventually you mastered it and had a great time with it?
Oh yeah, well, for example, with Black Sabbath, a lot of their songs are like almost 3 or 4 songs within one, with all the change-ups and everything. And so you sit there and you think you got that part down, and it turns out to be it's a 9-minute song. And it's like, okay, well, you have to keep going and going, and it does work out. Again, it's with the repetition and breaking it down to the point of where it's become second nature. That makes it so much easier and utilizing the tools that you have, the way to program it. I prefer doing multiple cue stacks and triggering off a master. So it works out rather well.
Nice. So let's talk about the actual art of playback. And you just touched on a little bit of that, about how you set up your desk. And that's what I want to talk about is how do you prefer having a cue list with all go commands, or do you like to have lots of buttons and faders where you can make it up? Or do you like a mix of the two? How do you prefer to set that up?
Well, depending on the show, I do prefer a master cue list, but I do have the multiple cue stacks that are being triggered from the master cue list or manually triggered by myself. I utilize a lot of follow cues where you time it out perfectly. So as long as you hit the first cue in perfect timing, then everything should follow suit correctly. A lot of it depends on the programmer that comes out also. Why now? Really?
Timing.
I'm very sorry about that. And it is a spam call, of course. Oh well, it has to stop soon here. Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. Real life.
Yep.
Okay, are we still there?
Yep, still here. So you were talking about on the console, the mixing of buttons and the go.
Yeah, so I made to be able to put everything together like that. And with the master cue list, I am triggering the sub cues. I also am triggering sub cues manually with the hits. I'm watching the artists on stage, so if there's a certain move I know they're going to do, for example, a drummer, I know when to. I'll have that manually, so I'm watching him to make sure that it's all in sync on stage with what's going on stage.
Now, I know you also do a lot of busking from time to time where you don't have a cue list defined and you're kind of making it up as the band plays along. How do you prefer to A, approach that, and B, set it up on the desk itself, set up your cues for busking?
Well, with busking, I prefer like having 2 or 3 pages with looks, a variety of looks. I'll break it down to where I have position cues, I'll have color cues, I'll have effect cues, and then utilizing the features of the board, being able to change the executor timing, and so trying to flow with that. A lot of times you're hearing music for the first time, so that makes it more difficult. But you go with your background and the feel of it, and if you have yeah, I mean, basically, it's in your blood to if you know how to busk if you have to. I mean, it breaks down to unless it's very unique style of music, it's rock and roll is pretty straight ahead.
And so how do you lay out those buttons for busking? Do you have like by fixture type intensities? Do you have a color stack? What's your preferred layout on the desk?
Well, again, I do make like dimmer cues, so I can control banks or types of fixtures. And then again, with the color cues, so I can take any cue and basically alter it live. So I have more of a variety of cues. Depending on the console also, uh, for example, with an MA, I'm very comfortable on that. So I'm able to utilize the timing aspects of the board, and I know its features well enough that I can get away with almost achieving anything I really need to on the fly. I'll lay it out so to the point that affect beams, ballyhoos, and then I'll have my standard ones of mole fay and things like that are locked in a certain position on the console, so I always know where they are.
Very good. And what about, do you use the tools like executor time and adjust things?
Oh, yeah, no, I use the executor time. Again, if you have an idea what the song is going to be like, it's easy to change it. If you don't know what they're doing, if it's the first time you hear it, you do it on the fly and do it the best you can.
Kind of have to feel the beat and then adjust accordingly, right?
Yes, exactly.
So whether you're busking or just doing a normal show, what are some clues you get towards the timing of what's happening? Are you watching the drummer for cymbal hits? Are you watching video content?
Well, you're watching everybody, but the drummer is your key factor up there on stage, because he either starts or stops or ends the song with he's very visual because of the fact that he's usually dead center, and you watch the main artist, but the drummer is the rhythm of the show, so or of the song. So definitely, I'm watching him. If you don't have the chance to watch him, sometimes, like for example, some bands like having blackouts in between songs. So you either have a click track in your ears to know when the song's going to start, or well, with Ozzy and Sabbath, they do like having lighting on stage, so I'm able to watch whoever's going to start the song and then be able to flow right into it.
Yeah, that's an important part of timing too, is knowing when they're starting the song. That can be difficult.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, definitely.
For sure. So I know you also, as a lighting director, you're calling spots at the same time that you're trying to hammer things out on the desk and maintain that timing. How do you manage that skill of calling the spots, seeing what they're doing, and staying on beat with the band as you're playing all your cues?
To me, the art of spot calling is well, a great thing, but as much as I love the art of spots, sometimes I'm glad that the technology is coming along that I don't have to worry about it as much. But with spot calling over the years, the standby, ready, and go type cue, you start putting that in your mindset where you almost have to jump that type, that cue, so it's in sync with everything else on stage. With Janet Jackson, we had 18 follow spots out there, and we would be calling. I'd be calling the show, and I'd break it down to where I would either have I broke it down to almost like football, where it was either man to man, a man on man, or zone coverage. So every spot operator had either a zone that they knew they had to go to and cover that, and then, or I'd say go zone coverage, lock in on that man, and follow that man until I call you to rezone again, and that way everyone was covered all the time.
That makes sense. Now, as you're playing back during a show, sometimes it can happen, probably not much with you, but you can make a mistake. You can hit something off beat or do something at the wrong moment.
Not me, no.
Not you, of course, no.
No.
But how does one recover from that and continue going along and get back on track when you've thrown yourself off and then you're thinking about it in your head, and how do you get that going again?
Well, hopefully you're the main I'm the only person that noticed that I was off, hopefully. If it's really, and that's the other thing with follow spots, they can throw you off because if they don't work, if they're not in sync, it can throw everything off, because then you have to adjust in your head. You're trying to correct somebody else while doing everything at the same time to keep your show in sync. So yeah, you just learn how to adjust quickly. You can't harp on anything that happens. It's happened. Just continue and keep striving, going forward. If you have the unfortunate experience where you have an operator that continually messes up, I'll just tell them to turn the light off and go home, because it's just too distracting and just taking away from concentration on the show and the overall look of the show.
Now, you said hopefully nobody notices if you make a mistake, but do you, when you've had a bad day or somebody has a bad day, do you go talk to the band and say sorry about that, or do they contact you and say, hey, we want to talk to you, you got to go down and...
Well, that has happened, but hopefully if you explain the situation, especially if it's a spot operator type situation, they'll understand that you're dealing with factors that are beyond your control. So hopefully they'll understand. I had the experience of, I was working with a console at one time where it had an expander on it, and every time I'd hit the go button, every universe was delayed by a millisecond. So one cue would be going boom, 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 and the artist was looking at me going, "You're supposed to be hitting it on the beat." I'm going, I am hitting it on the beat. This is just beyond my control. And so it was rather frustrating. And the developer of the console was sitting next to me, and he was going, "I have no idea why it's doing that." Right? Great. Yeah, thank you.
It doesn't help. And that's a good point. Sometimes things are out of your own control. You can hit it perfect, but the technology will get to you. And that's a great segue to where we're going to go next, talking about the technology. And a lot of times we have mixed things in the rig between the console and different types of fixtures. You might have fixtures that are LED, and you might have some that are arc with a manual shutter. And obviously the reaction time of things are very different than your reaction time. So how do you deal with that? Do you have to learn to hit the go button early ahead of the beat? How do you master all those variants in the technology and how that affects your timing?
Now, if it's your own rig, you can get your head around the fixtures much easier. If you're cloning, it becomes a more of an issue. especially if you're cloning from like a discharge to an LED type fixture because of the response time. Again, it's just learning how each fixture works and hopefully try to make it the best possible experience. You can't get it right all the time, unfortunately, especially when you're doing a festival or a cloning situation where you're at the mercy of what is given to you that day. And a lot of, I mean, there's so many fixtures out there, they try to emulate what, like a mole fave with the LEDs. It's not the same. It's just, it's sometimes better, sometimes worse. Yeah, I mean, it depends on the look you're shooting for. So it does take a while to get your head around it. And the more you utilize these new tools, the more you become aware of what you have to deal with and make it work.
So do you actually have to sometimes adjust yourself and hit ahead of the beat just because of the mole-fade, for example?
Well, you can adjust a little bit, but if you're dealing with a variety of fixtures, you still have to go with what you know, because you can't adjust for, you can't take into account every little detail, especially on the fly. Now, if it's your own rig, yes, because then you can adjust profiles so everything is working in the way you want it to. So that makes, again, having your own rig is such a blessing. I experienced that last year where I was going into some club shows, and every day was like, oh God, what are these? Oh my God, oh, that's where these lights went to die. You know, I had no idea, you know, and it's sometimes difficult, especially if you're doing a show where, for example, your show's CMY, and you run into a situation where, oh, guess what? We have color wheels today. It's like, oh, no. And you try to adjust, especially if you have cues that are like a 3-second crossfade. And all of a sudden you're just watching it going like, oh, great, it's red, green, yellow, and purple. Yay, thank you.
Right. So do you get concerned about the location of the listener, being that you're at front of house and you're hearing it one way and the audience members are scattered all over the place? How do you adjust for that?
Well, I don't think it's not the same luxury that sound has, where they're able to walk around and adjust, you know, for areas of the arenas or the stadiums. I basically have to think about where I am, and that also changes sometimes daily. The ideal situation, for example, we're normally about 100 feet from the stage, and you learn and you adjust to that. Now, then there's times where you're 200 feet away at a festival or closer even. So you do adjust. I've done shows where I have had the lighting console on stage, so you have to adjust for that also. So, yeah, you have to take that into account, but it's very difficult to say you're taking it into account for everybody in the audience. You try to make the experience the same for everybody, but you can't always, especially with distance. I try to make sure that in the audience, I'm not blinding people with floor lights, so they can still see the stage. I make sure my focuses are either above or below the majority of the audience. Sometimes you can't really do so, but yeah, you try to give it's the audience that's why we're there. So you want to give them the best possible experience.
Right. You know, I was working with Peter on a show once, and the artist requested that the music be in time on stage because she wanted just everything, or the lighting to be in time on stage because she wanted it to feel right for her. So we suddenly had to switch and use in-ears, in-ear monitors to hear the music at front of house exactly as it was being heard on stage. Have you had to do that? And what do you think of using in-ears?
I've had it for both music and for click tracks also. But It does help, but it also can throw you because you're not hearing. I mean, what you're hearing sometimes is not quite the same, but and that's why I prefer not having in ears. I prefer having the click track, so I can know when my timing should start, over the fact that having to hear what the artist is hearing exactly, because that's not always the same experience that we're having out of the front of the house.
Right. Yeah, I know. I tried it once for another show that had a lot of heavy bass, and it was very distracting because you would hear the hit in your ear, and then like half a second later, you'd feel it in your chest. And it was very hard to keep the timing going with those two feelings going on. It was tough. But I think in-ears can be useful from time to time as well. Like you said, if you're working on a video production or something.
Well, that's different, yeah. But in a live situation,
right.
Yeah.
So what about time code? What do you think about time code? Have you used shows with time code to keep everything timed perfectly?
I think it's a marvelous tool to use. I've seen some amazing shows done. A friend of mine here who's in town, Brian Hartley, does TSO, and it's a brilliantly done show. It's an art form. I think sometimes some people take it too far. I call it fart cues, where it's just to the point that you don't need to have every breath, have a cue. Sometimes, but again, it depends on the artist, and it does. I mean, you're able to achieve things that you could never do manually, just for the fact that your hands could not cover that much space on a console to achieve that. Now, mind you, I've had a friend who was doing Katy Perry, and I thought the show was time code because he wasn't moving his hand at all. And I went over. I said, "That's a brilliant time code show," and he went, "No, it wasn't. It's me." And I went, "But you don't move." He goes, "I've done it enough that I just have to hit the go." That's like that. And I was like, "Oh, great."
And when you've done time coded shows, did you yourself hammer in the cues and record as it went along the time code, or did you listen and try to write down times? How did you stamp in those times?
Well, with the technology now, it's so much easier to do because you're able to record button strokes all the way through, and if you don't like it, you just take out those that's cue stack basically, and redo it again. And then you can adjust in the editor to exactly put it exactly where you want it. So, yeah, you utilize your tools and make them work for you. That's why they're there.
Yep. So speaking of tools, can you imagine any future technology that would help operators have perfect playback and perfect timing abilities? Or do you think there's new tools in the consoles or new technology that could aid in perfecting the timing?
Well, right now, for me, the best tool out there is the new follow me, follow spot type situation, the Robes, all the PRG has their follow spot, but taking out the human factor where you're in control of all the follow spot functions is a huge benefit. It also, you're not having to call spots because the fact that you're controlling them, they're just following the person. And so that makes it a much easier show to run because you're not dealing with spotlights and the problems that come along with spotlights. For example, bad intercom is one of the worst things that happens. If that's a tool that you're relying on, and all of a sudden it's not there, your show goes to crap. So yeah, other future products. I mean, they just keep coming out. It's amazing what they've done with like drone technology. I mean, I don't know if I'll ever be able to utilize it, but it's fascinating that the borders just keep opening up to more and more imagination. and it makes it fun. It makes it a lot very exciting.
Definitely. And back to talk about the automated spot systems, I think that's a big plus, as you said, because all the queuing can be built into the desk, and now you're in charge of that timing, not these various people that are kind of random along a tour. They just have to point the light at the right person.
Right.
If you even have to do that with some systems, that's even automatic.
No, it is amazing. Plus, again, not having to call the spots, and not dealing with that factor, and also the safety issues that there are now. You don't require people climbing up 60 feet in the air to be locked in and waiting 20 minutes between set changes for everyone to get up in positions. They can go sit at a table and pick up a mouse and achieve the same thing.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely a good thing. So we've kind of rounded the corner here on this. There's a few questions that come in, and if anyone has questions, feel free to type it in the Q&A box or even the chat box, and I will ask Michael your questions. I'll start that in a moment. But Michael, before we get into the questions, is there anything else you want to talk about regarding perfect playback? I mean, this has been excellent so far.
Basically, just keep rehearsing and then going over and over again, and that it gets into your blood. And hopefully the band's perfect, and then that helps if the band's perfect too, because if they're off, that can throw you off also. It does happen.
Right.
Sometimes there'll be times where an extra 4 bars come into a song, and then you can see the band look at each other like, "Oh, who did that?" Like, "Oh well, just go with the flow, guys. Come on, you got, we have to be on the same page here, somewhat."
Yeah. All right. So here's a question that's come in. What is your favorite console that you've used?
I have to say probably the Grand MA2, just because with the technology and the features that it has, it allows you to do so much. The networking. For me, I like to utilize the remote focus, where I can just take a tablet up on stage and focus by myself. I'm not dealing with having to have people stand on stage. It just makes life a lot easier. And it's a very powerful console.
That it is. All right. So this question's a little long, but I'm going to read it all out to you. How do you break down a song that has too many punch and they are always the same, chorus after chorus? Would you go halfway in the punch or all the way and punch all of them? For example, a song from Toto, Hold the Line. There is so much punch that if you punch them, all of them, it will look like too much. So you go by just doing change in verses and chorus, or do you do more?
Well, I would say you just still try to keep it interesting to the audience, even though it is repetitive. So maybe break it up so you have multiple looks, even though it is the same, musically the same. So it doesn't become mundane and then just over and over again. You want to keep it interesting for the audience. That's why we're there, to keep them happy and have them have the best experience possible.
Yep. Next question is, how long does it take for you to prepare to perfect a playback? Let me read that correctly. How long does it take you to prepare for a perfect playback of a lighting show?
For me, I like having a week of prep beforehand, where I can just keep pounding the songs into my head, and then using visualizers, or if we have the luck, having a production for 3 to 5 days, where you can actually have your hands on the fixtures, so you're getting the real feel of the fixture, and the response time. So yeah, basically about a week for me. I enjoy that for a major tour.
Yeah, that makes sense. What was one of your revolutionary learning moments?
Uh, well, one of them is don't let your friends take you out to a restaurant and get you really drunk and have you walk through a plate glass window. That was a big one. You know.
That seems like quite a learning moment.
Yeah, it was a learning moment. I learned that you don't do that more than once.
And I understand that you walked through a plate glass window after drinking too much, yet the next day you ran a perfect show.
Well, hey, you got to run with the big dogs. You got to do it. You know.
Yeah. Okay. What do you look for in programming to make playback easier or more efficient? Do you do your own programming?
I'm lucky. I do program. I'm not in the same caliber of some of the masters out there. But I can achieve the same look, but what they can do in like 3 minutes might take me, a half hour to achieve, or if. And some of them, I guarantee I probably couldn't achieve some of the things that Benny or Mark Schwinski pull off. It was like, oh my God. There's so many masters out there on the console. But yeah, I'm lucky that I am able to program and adjust for my sake and make it look the way I would prefer it to look.
Cool. Okay, next question is, if you could go back and run a show again, what show would it be and why?
Ooh, well, I have to say it's what some of the best times, the Paul McCartney tour that Mark Brickman designed. It was just a brilliant family experience out there. It was everybody was on the same page. Everybody wanted to give Paul 120% every time because he always gave 120%. And it was just great music to work with.
So here's a good question. Does your dancing skills help with your perfect timing?
Oh, yes, of course. I don't know who asked that, but yeah, that boat done sunk a long time ago, I think. But back in the day where there was alcohol and other substances involved, yeah, the dancing did help too.
If you're working with another designer and you prepare a song with your own cues, and he or she gives you a cue list with total other cues, how do you deal with that?
Well, you do what they ask, and then when they leave, you go back to what you're used to. And that's for Terry Cook out there. Terry knows that. Yeah. Yeah. He's my friend Ethan Weber, who does the Stones. We're both in a situation where we've done these bands for 20 plus years, and it's in your bone marrow that what is going to happen, and Terry Good just looks like, now just do the way you're going to do it your way, because you're going to do it that way as soon as I'm gone anyway. So it's reality.
Do you find that the designers are checking up on you on YouTube?
I don't care if they do. I'm going to give them my best every night, no matter what, and that's what they're going to see every night.
Very good. Okay, another question. Do you have any references for a bad show? Any examples that people can look up to see a poorly timed show?
See, I have a problem with that because my buddy, he criticizes quite a few shows, but I have to say that it's an interpretation. So it's hard to say what is truly a bad show. Maybe it's just the way they perceive it. I mean, it's like art. You can't say something really, is it really bad art, or maybe you just don't understand it. If they're trying, I mean, I've seen shows I prefer not to, I can't agree with, but is it bad? I don't know.
Right. Okay, next question we kind of touched on, but I think he wants a little more explanation of how do you break down your playback? Cue lists, subs, and effects.
Oh.
What's the layout, and do you play back in a linear way on live shows?
Basically, I break it down with my master cue stack is usually the closest button executor to me. And then depending on how many sub cue stacks there are, a lot of times I'll even put some of them on another page because I don't need to see them. I know what they're going to be doing. For example, like a mole chase or something that you utilize quite often. I know where it is, but I can trigger it virtually. If it's a busking show, it's an entirely different layout because of the fact that you have to have more at your fingers than just the recorded cue stacks that you're accustomed to with a pre-programmed show.
All right, a couple more questions. What kind of music do you like best if you could choose for running a concert?
Oh, well, whoever's paying me. I hate, because, there's so many, I mean, I've had the luxury of working with so many different types of music over my career, and all of it makes it fun. I mean, there's a couple artists I prefer not to work with again, and they probably prefer not to work with me again. But yeah, it depends. I'm very lucky to have a career that I get to do what I love to do, and I get to deal with some very talented people, and you can't really ask for much more than that in life.
Definitely. All right, so again, one more question here. If there's video on the stage, do you run an intensity master for the screens so you can adjust on the fly if it's too bright?
We work with the video directors usually. There are times where I take over video control and make it into a lighting tool. But yes, you do try to adjust so you have the perfect balance between video and lighting. Definitely.
Super. Well, it looks like we've come to the end of questions. I know your email address is on the screen, so if people have further questions, they can reach out to you and ask you directly. And this has been a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Sorry about the phone call in the middle of this.
That's okay. But it's been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it, and I think everybody online enjoyed it as well. So thank you very much, Michael.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm again very happy to be here and very blessed to be amongst the people I've been working with. So thank you.
Welcome. Laura, did you want to wrap up?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, Michael. We really appreciate you presenting today, and Brad for the co-presentation. I did want to mention that Brad does have another session on Thursday of this week. So if you wanted to go on to pro.harman.com and register for his session, we do have a lighting webinar tomorrow as well. And then I believe a couple next week. So quite a few things on the calendar. Thank you as always for attending. We know that you're busy and we appreciate your support of the learning sessions. So thank you, Michael, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye now.